Hey nerdy knitter, Tanya here. Welcome to another episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast. So settle in with your knitting and a drink and let's have a good chat. I've got lots of knitting piled up over here beside me in sort of an organized mess, but we have one announcement before we dive into that knitting and our toe up sock series. Pattern number 2 just released this month for toe up socks on magic loop, one at a time, featuring a contrast cuff and toe, not cuff, a toe and heel, and then a waffle rib pattern on the leg. This is using hobby yarns. They are sock wool dots with this. It's sort of like a gradient color. And then the contrast color toe and heel as well. So you can find that pattern and the tutorial link down below if you want to practice knitting toe up socks. And this has lots of fun techniques in it as well. I try to sit down and I start by thinking of the different needle configurations, and we have generally 6 that we can use for knitting socks. DP ends magic loop, 2 at a time on magic loop, or 2 circulars, but we didn't go there. And then 2 circulars and shorties and flexible DP ends. So, and then I sit and think about like all of the different types of heels and toes and sort of do some mix and matching. So every tutorial features something different along with that needle configuration. It'll be a different type of heel or toe, or maybe a different stitch pattern on the leg. But so lots of fun techniques to explore with this sock if you want to practice knitting toe up socks. Now I love to talk about knitting books because we get a little bit nerdy here. You can see I've got all my favorite knitting books behind me and a lot more on my iPad because I buy them from the Kindle app store a lot as well. But this one is a recent one I had and I don't think I've ever mentioned it before. It's called Embroidery on Knitting by Britt-Marie Christoffersson. She is Swedish and there's some information about her, and she is a fascinating woman. Let's see if I can find her picture. She was part of this founding member of the 10 Swedish designers, 10 Gruppen, in 1970. And with her focus is on knitting specifically. But she's got a bit of her history in here. She's fascinating. So if you get this book, be sure to read the introduction. And something very interesting, in 2017, IKEA paid homage to this, what was it called again? The member of the 10 Swedish designers by using some of their designs on their linens and fabrics and stuff like that, including her design. So I thought that was very interesting. So her focus is on knitting and her backstory is just interesting in here. But then this book focuses on adding embroidery to your knitting. And I'll just show you the back cover because you can see some of the embroidery on there. So this is divided up into chapters basically, and there's actually not a ton of text after the introduction introducing her, but there are lots of different categories. I'll show you an overhead of some of the things here. Threading, running and straight stitch, whipped or lace running stitch, couched bars, back stitch, couching, alternating or double stem stitch, turkey work, Brussels stitch, 4-sided stitch, blanket stitch, and more. There's a lot more. So for each of these techniques, and if you have done any embroidery, then probably some of these terms are familiar to you. But basically, it is just like a 2-page spread of 1 page, like with a paragraph about that, like here's the running and straight stitch, and then very just simple black and white line drawings of how that is done. And then the facing page is like a black and white line drawing of knitting, basically like stockinette stitch, and showing how it would look on that fabric where you would go in and out to create this, in this case, the running stitch. Then after those 2 pages is just lots of colorful pictures, just photographs of how that particular stitch is used. As you can see, like in the pretty like big polka dots on this Gansey style top, or just all of these different motifs here they're just that running stitch, but just different ways it can be worked to create a design on knitted fabric. Or a step up from that, here's the whipped or laced running stitch, where it's the same idea, just a paragraph about how to do it, and then a simple line drawing explanation, and then sort of like it's charted out right on the knitting itself, just to give you an example of how it looks. And then lots of pictures of how that can be used on your knitting itself. So the instructions are pretty basic, but then there's lots of inspirational images to show you how to use that technique on your knitted fabric. So I think it's really interesting. Like, it's just another way to add some design to your knitwear, like if you want to knit just a plain sweater in a really lovely yarn. I've been thinking I would like to have like a cashmere sweater, but nothing like super trendy or fancy, just a basic v-neck sweater, but in a really luscious yarn. But then to like style it up a little, you could add some embroidery to it. So I follow some different like embroidery Instagram handles, and I love to watch the different techniques on there, and I love that it can be included on your knitting as well. So this book is really a great resource if that's something you want to explore. And of course you can do it not just on sweaters, but it would be lovely on like cushions or things like that as well, home decor type items. But just another thing to expand your knitting toolbox or add to your knitting toolbox. I have a few things off my needles. The first is our next sock tutorial for November. In this, I just really like this self-striping color. We still have some road construction here, and this colorway is called Cone Orange, and it reminds me of that construction that's going on. So this features just a basic wedge toe up construction using lifted increases, and then a fleagle heel, which is basically just a gusset and then a round heel turn, but it's reversed, so the heel turn is sort of your heel flap at the same time, because you're working your decreases to create the length and the shape of the turn. Well, you turn your heel down here. I'm not explaining this very well, am I? You turn your heel down here, but then as you're decreasing all of those gusset stitches, it sort of forms the flap as well. So it's a really interesting technique and very simple to do, easy to do for 2 at a time on magic loop, which is what this pair is, and then finishes with some knit 2 purl 2 rib at the top, and the Russian lace bind off, I believe, is what we used for this one. So really fun pair of socks. So this uses the PatricKnits Biz sock. This is from Biscot Yarns. It's a signature yarn line from a designer. Oh, his name is Patrick. I can't remember his last name now. But on their Biz sock base, which is an 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. So nice, lovely pair of socks. And this is my leftover bit, but it's just really fun color to knit with, and nice and bright. And I like I mean, it's October, so orange is always a fun color to knit in October. And the other thing that is off my needles is my good scarf. This is a pattern from Barbara Benson. It's just basically a 1-row repeat, and I just kept knitting until I ran out of yarn basically and had enough just to do the bind off. So it's just garter stitch with some slip stitches in there. You can see right there, and that's the same on the other side. It's reversible, which is very nice for a scarf. You want both sides to look nice, and great simple pattern. This is what I would call potato chip knitting. Like, you just want to knit another row because it's easy, but it's not just garter stitch. I get bored if it's just garter stitch. I want a little bit else, something else in there, and this is just enough. So I like to do this when when I'm either out and about, because it's simple enough just to do 1 row if that's all I have time for, or if I'm watching something on TV and I need to sort of pay attention to what's going on. Like I finished a Turkish drama, but it's all with English subtitles, and of course I have to read because I don't understand Turkish. So it's easy enough that I can still knit, but I can also take the time to read the subtitles as well. And I've been putting a few more things in my sort of my YouTube queue, my watch later list, looking at some other Turkish shows, because I really enjoyed that one. I talked about it a few episodes ago, so I won't talk about it again. But this is that kind of knitting where you watch. If you're watching something with subtitles, then this is a perfect pattern for that. Quite a lot on my needles. The first thing is a pair of mittens that are from this book, Traditions Revisited by Aleks Byrd, Modern Estonian Knits. So using different Estonian techniques. That's what really drew me to this book. It's not just a bunch of knitting patterns. It's a lot of knitting patterns too, but each chapter focuses on a different traditional knitting technique that's traditional to Estonia. So the mittens I'm knitting actually use 2 of the techniques. So they have this fringe at the bottom, which is one of the techniques in the book, and now I'm working on the mitten itself, and it is this embroidery here that is the other technique. So these have been, I don't want to say a trial, but yeah, kind of. well, I decided I wanted to just do them 2 at the same time on magic loop. I was planning to, I wanted to do 2 circulars, but I only have, I'm using US 2s and I only have the 2 needles. I don't have enough for doing 2 circulars, so that was canceled out. So I did magic loop instead, and I think it might have been a mistake. Now that I'm doing all of the embroidery as well, you've got your 2 main colors, so I've got 2 balls of yarn for that. And then I've got 2 contrasting colors for each one. So that's another 2 balls of yarn and 2 balls of yarn. But then on top of that, this embroidery, you have to hold it double-stranded. So I had way too much yarn hanging off. It's still, I mean, you can still see it's a lot of yarn hanging there. But I did end up at first when I was knitting them, I was doing I had 2 separate balls of yellow and I would be holding them together, and then it was just impossible it was so many colors or strands of yarn hanging off this that I took all of that out. I hadn't gotten far at that point, and I reballed the yarn, so it was 2 strands in 1 ball, and that at least helped a little. But it's a little bit every few rounds I have to stop and untangle because it's a lot of yarn hanging off here. But I'll have them done at the same time, so it'll be fine. So I'm about, well, halfway through the mitten part before I have to do the top. I've got to do another set of this embroidery, and then I've got to try it on because my hands aren't super large, but I might need to make it a little bit longer. But then it does have a tip point at the top where you do this pattern repeat again. Now the fringe, that was not difficult at all. Both of these techniques are very, very simple, and there you can see some of the embroidery is down here as well within the fringe. The fringe is very simple but tedious, just the fringe. And let me see, this first row of fringe I had finished in 1 sitting when I was just learning it, and then basically there's 2 more rows of fringe right there. That 2 rows on both mittens, because I was doing the two at the same time, probably took me a whole Saturday afternoon. Well, it's more than 2 rows, but the fringe itself takes a lot of time. But yeah, it was probably a whole Saturday, and all I did was that 2 rows of fringe right here. That was it. It was a lot of work. But then once I moved past that, super simple. It's just plain stockinette stitch for the mittens themselves. The embroidery, very, very simple. You just sort of, it's like you're doing some sort of slip stitch knitting, but you're just sort of laying the yarn in the front so you get the strands across the front like you would if you're doing some kind of slip stitch design. And then you move it to the back when you're done working it, or to finish the design, to do the whole design. And then because you're working in the round, but it's only this little section here, every other round you've got the yarn is on the wrong end basically, but even that you just make a loop and you sort of pull out the excess yarn. It's really simple. I'm not explaining that well either, but it's not difficult at all. The hardest part right now is all of the yarn management, because I've got 2 strands for every of the color for the embroidery, plus I've got the 2 at the same time mittens, which I'm not sure was a very good idea, but it is what it is, so I might as well just keep plugging away. I did make another change. The original pattern just uses an afterthought thumb where you put in a bit of waste yarn and then you reknit those stitches and just keep going with your mitten, and then you pull out that little bit of waste yarn and knit your thumb. But so no gusset or anything. And I I've done the afterthought thumbs and they're fine. I use them sometimes, especially if it's an all over color work mitten and I don't really want to try to plan out how to do the gusset. Then I'll just pop in an afterthought thumb. I've done that before with my own designs, but where this one is just plain stockinette, there's no color work on the rest of the mitten, it's just plain black. I decided I would change that. So that was the other thing too, is making sure, which is nice when you're doing 2 at a time. You can actually make sure your mittens, you're not making the same mitten twice. You can make sure that you've got your thumb on the opposite side. So I've got my thumb gussets going on over here as well. So, and I think getting pretty close to probably one more pattern, one more little flower, and my thumb gusset should be ready to put on hold and finish the rest of the mitten. But really interesting techniques and not difficult. Fringe is tedious, but it's not difficult, and I do like the way it looks. This palette, I'm using Knit Picks palette for the orange, for the yellow and the red. Let me see, the colors are Serrano and Semolina. And then the black yarn is just Cascade 220 Superwash in black. So, I mean, I like the colors. I think they're nice and bold and look really good together. The palette yarn is kind of fluffing out. Like it's kind of, well, palette is only a 2-ply yarn, so it will sort of felt and pill more easily. So with my fringe especially, it's sort of looking, I don't know if, not really raggedy is the word, but it's not like a really crisp piece of yarn. Like it's starting to not felt out, but it's just getting fuzzy looking, which I don't know, my daughter, when I was first working on it, she's like, that looks like a Muppet. I'm like, yeah, it kind of does, but it's a cute Muppet. But anyway, just really interesting techniques. I'm not sure you can get this pattern, like buy the pattern individually. You have to get the book, but there are lots of really interesting patterns and techniques in the book, and a few more that I'd like to explore in the future, but I gotta get through these mittens first. So I'm working on a new cowl design. Doesn't really have a name yet. We're gonna have to maybe do a poll or ask what you think it should be named, but this is, right now it's just the Ocean Waves cowl, but that's probably not the final name. So the yarn for this is Knit Picks Chroma. The white is just like the bare yarn, and then the gradient blue is colorway is called Cousteau, which is what I wanted for, you know, the ocean. So it moves through all these colors. Really, really pretty yarn. Just stranded color work, 2 colors, 2 skeins of yarn, and you just keep knitting. I don't think I have enough to do another round, so I finished, but I might have been able to squeeze, not another round, but another section of the pattern, but I wasn't sure. And it's definitely long enough to fit around, because that's how it will look. So it's knit in a tube, no wrong side on the outside, all of your floats are on the inside. That actually might be kind of cool to wear that way too. Not that I would, but so you knit it in the round from one end to the other, and then you sew up those 2 ends, and then it'll get worn like that. So nice, comfy, cozy cowl. So I just finished blocking it, a quick soak, and just letting it dry, and that evens out that color work, because color work can look still a bit puckery. I might just block it again. We'll see. But definitely color work can use a good soak, and when I say block, I just mean get it wet and then let it dry, and just soaking it and letting the yarn do its thing, bloom, or just get that puckering out. Because I mean, if you do color work, you know that it doesn't look that great until you give it a good wash. So that is done. I was going to record like just a tutorial for sewing the 2 ends together. It's just like horizontal mattress stitch, where you're joining a cast on end to a bind off end. So it's not difficult, but maybe not something everybody does every day. So I thought I'd record that, and then this pattern I think is coming out, I don't know, December or January, I can't remember, just self-publishing. So I'll let you know here when the pattern releases. But the knitting is done. I just need to get the pattern written and get the tutorial video finished and add that link to the pattern and all the little things that go around getting a pattern finished, pictures and things like that too. So lots to do before it's actually ready to publish, but it's not really off the needles because I have to finish sewing it, but the knitting part is finished. So I've been working on a sweater, and what's kind of funny is the yarn for this sweater I got last Christmas, and I'm at that point where I'm already planning like what I'd like to get this Christmas, and it's a whole pile of sweaters and shawls basically. But for this one I dyed the yarn myself. I'll show you some of, well, I only have the 1 skein out right now, the rest of it's in a bag behind me, but there's one of the colors. So this pattern, she uses a fade technique. So that's what I did. I got bare Wool of the Andes sport weight yarn, and I dyed 4 different colors, and then you knit basically 4 quadrants. You're knitting flat, you start at one wrist and you knit from that wrist all the way to the center front, repeat for the other side, then you do the same for the back. You knit from the wrist to the center back, both sides. So you end up with 4 pieces, and then you have to sew them together. You're sewing down the shoulders and then up the side seams, which is a lot of sewing. It was quite a lot. And there's some cables in there, and then you've got the fading going on. It's sort of a dolman sleeve, so you got all this shaping going on as well. But all of that is done. there's the center of it right there, but there's one sort of side. And then after you sew it, you add your cuff. You don't do the cuff right away. You start actually right here at this point in each piece. And then when you sew it up, you add your cuff and go down that way. So I just added the cuff, still have my ends on those to weave in. But this is, well, some of the body as much as I can show right here. Those dolman sleeve. So I still have to add the bottom ribbing, which will give it more length, and it's quite a deep ribbing, like 4 inches or so. And then there is a front band that you sew separately with more cables, and then you attach that, or you sew that on as well. So there's like the cable running down the sleeve. But really fun knit, not difficult to do. Like the pattern has written instructions, but then she also has charts, or like sort of a spreadsheet kind of thing, so you know right away what's happening on each specific row, because you have shaping on the top of the sleeve, and you also have shaping along the bottom of the dolman sleeve, and then you're also working a cable, and then you're also fading between different colors, so there's a lot to keep track of. So she has these sort of spreadsheet things that you just follow the one for your size, and then you can tell right away, okay, on this row I've got only 1 increase, but I'm crossing my cable and I'm changing colors. Like, so it helps you keep track that way, because that part, just by following the written instructions, can be confusing because you've got so many different shapings, the cable crossing plus the fading going on at the same time. So it's a little more stripy than I wanted it to be, especially right here, but it's not terrible, and I'm still gonna wear it. I'm not gonna not wear it. And there's the back, which is, I do like all of the purpley blues together. But yes, a bit stripy right here between these color changes, and that was not intentional, but the only yarn dyeing I'd done up to this point was with some Kool-Aid. So this was like my first real dyeing project. Probably shouldn't have started with a whole sweater's worth of yarn in 4 different colors, but I don't know, it's what I wanted to do. So I've got lots left over. I don't know what I'm going to do with all that. I have to figure that out. But so I've got 4 different colors, and all of these sort of started with a dark, not navy, it's not that dark, but like a cobalt blue, and then sort of a color in between where it's like a blend of a lighter sky blue and that cobalt, and then more of the sky blue, and I started blending in some magenta, which gave it sort of this purpley color, and then more of that magenta for this part. So it was lots of fun dyeing the yarn. I used as a reference a Craftsy class. I'll link to that down below too, but that was a really big help in helping me sort out like how to do these different techniques, because some of them I did like a solid color and then sort of more of a variegated yarn for that center one. And so that video, or that class, was really helpful for that. And then also figuring out the amounts of dye to use for each batch, and because there's some math involved, and not hard math, just like, you know, how much dye to use basically compared to how much yarn you're dyeing. But lots of fun. And I think I'm making my Christmas list already, and I'm putting more bare yarn in. I've got a couple shawls that I'd like to knit that would be nice with some gradient colorways, so I think I'm going to dye the yarn again myself for those. But progress on this is coming along really well. I just have the bottom rib and the front band to finish. Now, the one other thing about this was choosing the size to knit. My gauge, I didn't write it down, but my gauge was so completely different, my row gauge especially. And the row gauge is super important because that's what actually gives you the circumference of your sweater, since you're knitting it from wrist to center. So basically I just looked at my row gauge and figured out how long it needed to be from wrist to center, and then how much, like around my body, the circumference needed to be. So I ended up knitting, even though I wear one of the larger sizes, it varies depending on the pattern of course, but like up in the 3 or 4 XL, I ended up knitting the smallest size because my row gauge was so very different. But it worked out just fine. It's a little bit shorter than I wanted, but I can just add some extra length for the bottom ribbing. So even that's not too terrible a concern, because I can make it a little longer there instead of like cropped or whatever. It's not really cropped, but it's on the shorter side for what I like. But we will see how I end up doing that, because sometimes I end up adding too much length and then it's just a little bit too long. So it's always a balance, trying to find what will work just right. But gauge wise, yes, my gauge was so different that I just, using the same weight of yarn, but I just knit following the instructions for the smallest size, and it still worked out just fine. I'm working on a new shawl design using some different skeins of yarn. So we've got this one, it's just a natural color. And then this set of colors, you can see I've already used quite a lot. So this is the Fruit Garden colorway. This is yarn from Sweet Georgia, her Tough Love sock yarn. The full skein is just a natural skein of yarn, and this is a party of 5 set. So 5 mini skeins, 28 grams each, works out to about 525 yards of yarn, I think, in the mini skein set. So fruit salad is what this one's called. Really lovely set of colors, nice and sort of harvesty over here, but then you add these pinky purple colors, and it's just a nice mix of colors. And from the amount of yarn here, you can probably tell I'm working away on something. I'm working on a kite shawl. So I'm working on an article for Cast On magazine about the different ways to knit triangle shawls. And of course you've got top down, bottom up, and sideways like asymmetrical or boomerang. And then there's also the kite shawl, which is a pretty recent invention by Martina Baum. I think it's 2017 is her first pattern using that construction. The other ones I'm not sure how old they are. I want to do a bit of research to see if I can probably not figure out who first used that design, because some of them, there's just so many of those, but trying to sort of figure out where they started. But a kite shawl starts out at a little point, and you're increasing at both edges, but you're decreasing in the center, and it sort of creates like a spine stitch down the center. But then when it's like you're about at the halfway point of how long or how wide you want the shawl to be, your stitch count doesn't change at that point. I'm at that point now. I've already finished the first half. But what you're doing instead, you're still decreasing in the center, you're increasing at the edges, so on both right side and wrong side rows. So like the right side cancels out because of that decrease. But then on the wrong side rows, you're dropping your increase, which is a yarn over in this case, on one side, but still adding it on the other. So you're sort of taking your stitches from one side of that spine, that center decrease, and moving it to the other side. And then once all of those stitches are moved to the other side of that decrease, you just bind off. And that sounds weird, I know, but it does end up creating a triangle. So I started here, and you can see there's the decrease in the center right there. So just garter stitch stripes using the first of the colors, using the natural yarn, and then one color from the Party of 5 set, and then some eyelets and a bit of just not very difficult lace in there, and then some more eyelets and more stripes. And then this one needs to be blocked out, but that's just a daisy stitch, which I really think is nice and cute and fun. And then repeating all of that, so I'm back to working the lace again on my third color. So you can see that stitch or that decrease in the center gives you that line. But now I'm at the point where I'm dropping that the increase on one side but keeping it on the other, and that sort of shifts all of your stitches over. So I have fewer stitches on this side now than I do, on this side than I do on this side. But it's an interesting construction. It's just a little bit different than your standard like top-down shawl or even bottom-up, which isn't as popular, I suppose, as a top-down. But I like triangle shawls that are longer, so I like this construction method because you get this really long wingspan and not just top-down triangle shawls by themselves. They're never wide enough for me, but they're usually like more deep than wide, and I don't love the way they fit. I can't wear it. I like to wear them sort of like a scarf almost, and I feel like that one is better suited to wear like bandana style, and those don't look good on me. I just look like I'm wearing a big bib, and I have a theory that smaller busted women can get away with all of that bib-like fabric hanging right there, but I don't have a small bust, so when I put that on top, it's too much. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it feels. So I prefer shawls that have longer wingspans, like rectangular shawls, like this kite shawl, asymmetrical triangles as well. So I'm not a huge, I've done top down triangle shawls, but they're not my favorite to wear. And same with bottom up, you end up with the very same just basic triangle shape, and the wingspan is not long enough for me. So this is coming along. I've already finished basically the first half. You do like the first half where you're increasing, and then at that point you stop and your stitch count remains the same. So really love the colors and how they're coming out. And basically I keep doing garter stitch stripes until I'm bored, and I'm like, okay, let's do something else. And then it was like, okay, let's add some lace. Now let's add some daisy stitches and go back to a bit of garter stitch to make it a little easy. And then, hey, let's do some more lace. So I actually haven't worked out the whole pattern yet. Sometimes I do, depending on what I'm knitting. Socks, I usually have the whole pattern written out first, and then I knit from it. But for this shawl, it's more of like figuring it out as I go. Like, I knew I wanted to add some lace. I didn't even have a lace pattern picked out, but I found a simple one that I could just plug in there, and I think it looks nice. And daisy stitches are always fun, so that was just an easy thing. Some eyelets, you know, those are pretty simple. So it's working out. So I think I'm going to be doing, I'll finish this color. I'm actually almost out of this color. So then I'll probably do my fourth color, and I'll do some more daisy stitches with it. And then the fifth color will do more lace. So I'm sort of alternating between the two. But then I've got enough left over of each color that I might finish with like stripes of daisy stitches just for something different at the end. We'll see. But I still have quite a bit of the natural yarn left as well, because I'm not using that as quickly as I thought I would. But it's nice and colorful. It's very fun to work on, and I really do love the colors in her Party of 5 sets. I had a few, like I was looking at them, and I had a list of them that I've liked, and I'm like, oh, just here's what I like, pick one of these, and this is the one they sent me, and I think it looks lovely. Nice and bright, but sort of harvesty with those colors. But anyway, so this is a work in progress. It's not even due, I don't think, until January, but I wanted to get it finished because we've got our sweater workshop coming up, and I really want to be able to focus on that and have everything else sort of off my plate and off my needles. So that's everything that's currently on my needles. I have a few things that are going to be on my needles soon. I have one thing on my crochet hook, and that is a crocheted blanket that I've been working on to improve my crochet skills. Now this one I'm using the Knit Picks Brava Sport. It's a design from Janie Crow, her Fruit Garden Crochet Along. It's a free pattern online. I'll link to it down below. And I picked it because she also does videos. She had YouTube videos that went along with the pattern to walk you through all of the different techniques. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and my crochet skills were very limited before taking this, going through this, well, I want to call it a course because it's like 8 clues and like just a lot of different things going on. And I have just finished. All I have left is a border. There's, well, a couple pages of instructions to finish to add like a colorful border to this, but I'm in love with this motif. I'm not sure I'm in love with my color choices, but the motif itself is just lovely. And well, I think actually the one in the corner is my favorite one. But the border I just finished, and I just finished sewing it on last night, so I can't really hold it all up, but this is, it's pretty much done. I think it came out really nice. Just using, it's just Knit Picks Brava Sport. It's an acrylic yarn, so it's easy to care for. Just the border to do, and this took me quite a while. I'm pretty sure I started this in the spring. I think that sounds right. So a lot of work, a little bit at a time every weekend, because that's usually when I do my own personal projects. During the week I focus on work related stuff like designing or sock tutorials, and then the weekends I can do my own personal knitting projects and crochet. And it just, I'm really happy with how it came out. For the most part, I'm not totally in love with my color choices, but I just think overall when you look at it back here, it does look really nice. I'm really happy, really pleased. So this is going to be a gift for my mother-in-law. She doesn't watch this, so she knows about it though. I would not gift somebody a big blanket like this because it's more of a decorative thing that you're supposed to put somewhere where you can see it, not just shove in a closet. So But I had showed her the picture. I wanted to knit one. I really didn't need one for myself. Now I want one though. So I'm gonna have to do another one. I'm gonna pick a different pattern. I have a list of Janie Crow's patterns that I just love. She's got so many beautiful floral patterns like these. But this one will go to my mother-in-law for Christmas. She knows about it though. I showed her a picture, and not of this specific one, but like the pattern picture, and asked her if she liked that and if she'd want that, and she loved it. So she can have a nice pretty throw to put on her couch. So I have plenty of time. It's not, I mean, I still have a month and a half or so till Christmas. So I've got to just get that border finished. But I'm very pleased with this, and I learned a lot of crochet stuff. So I'd like to do another crochet project just to sort of cement those things in my head, because a lot of the time I had to reread things. Even after waiting like a week and starting something again, I would forget how to do like a, I don't know, double crochet together or something. I couldn't remember how to do it, so I'd have to keep like looking it up. And I'm getting now to where I remember those things, so I'd like to sort of solidify that knowledge, I guess, by working on another project. But I'm thinking another blanket would be nice. And I kind of want one now to throw on my chair because they're just very pretty and decorative. So I'll have to pick out a pattern, but that probably won't be at least till after Christmas, because I've got my own Christmas list to do, and then, well, other things coming up that we're going to talk about next. For upcoming projects, I have another sock tutorial in the works. We've released 2, the 3rd one's coming out next month, and I've already got the 4th one scheduled as well, knitting socks on 2 circular needles. So I'm getting ahead of schedule, which is lovely because I really want to focus on that sweater workshop. So I've got 2 more tutorials to go. So the next one is going to be using this lovely yarn. I'm really excited to try this yarn. I love the way it feels. Now this is called Ontario Sock from Alley Cat Yarns. If you've ever watched past podcasts this past year or so, then I talk about her yarns a lot. She generously has given me different yarns for the cuff down sock tutorials. I used her yarns quite a bit and loved them all, and have used them for some other projects and designs as well. But I hadn't tried this one, Ontario Sock. Now what makes this one so nice is that the sheep are raised in Ontario, Canada, and then the yarn is spun in Ontario, and then the yarn is dyed by Melissa of Alley Cat Yarns in Ontario as well. So Ontario Sock is a true Ontario yarn. So this is a blend of Cheviot and Dorset wool, which is, I don't want to say scratchy, but I wouldn't love it on my face, you know, on my neck, because it's a bit woolly feeling. It's not super soft. But I love that in a sock. I like a good sturdy sock. When I like to knit merino, you know, superwash merino, so lovely and soft. But unless I do like make sure my gauge is really tight, or use some sort of like a heel flap pattern, but I like to put it on the bottom of the sock on the heel, my socks tend to wear out because I guess I'm just hard on them. But when it comes to these hardier wools, they are just sturdier, and they're great for socks, especially if you're like me and you kind of tend to wear holes in your socks. So those lovely merino wools are so nice, but not as hard wearing. They're very soft and lovely, but not hard wearing like these yarns. And the other interesting thing about this yarn is that instead of nylon, we have mohair. I think it's an 80-20. Yes, it's an 80% Dorset Cheviot, and then 20% mohair. So the mohair is used instead of nylon. Mohair, when you probably think of it as like just something fuzzy that you know, hold double with your sweater, but it's actually really strong. So it's another good addition to sock yarn. And so this one is not super soft. If you love super soft sock yarns, this is not the one for that. But if you love sturdy sock yarns, definitely the one for that. So Ontario Sock. So talked enough just about the yarn, but it's just lovely, her yarn. And I like that a lot of her yarns are just, they're like that. They are different breeds of wool. It's not just, you know, your standard superwash everything. She's got like lots of different, let me see, I really like, she's got a linen yarn that is really nice that I've used, and I've used different sock blend yarns as well. But this one was one I hadn't tried, and I was very excited to try. Oh, she has a lovely silk and yak mixed with wool. That one's really nice. She's got great yarn, good yarn blends, great colors. She's got an advent calendar knot surprise, like you can see all the colors at a time. That's very lovely too. So I'll have a link for her anyway down below, because she has I just really love her yarn. It's a Canadian yarn dyer. I'm in Canada, so I like to use Canadian yarns when I can, and I love that she takes the time to source these different wools, so you get more than just like the range of superwash yarns. You know, you get more interesting wool choices. But anyway, this is going to be for another sock tutorial. This one I think is my flexible DPN tutorial. For this one we're going to do a sweet tomato heel. I haven't quite decided on the toe construction yet. I've looked at a few different ones and we'll figure that out. And then on the top of the sock we'll have some sort of a, like on the instep, some sort of a lace or maybe a cable or something like that. And so pretty simple sock itself. Sweet tomato heel is a great heel if you have a high instep, or if you struggle with your short row heels, like they're too tight, which can definitely happen. I've knit somewhere that the short row heel is just not comfortable across, where it stretches across that instep. It's just too tight. A sweet tomato heel is still a short row heel, but it's, instead of doing like the 2 wedges that you would have in a basic short row heel, you do 3, and it makes it just a little bit deeper and easier to wear for those of us with wide foot, high instep. So it's a nice heel for that, and it's also easily adjustable. Like you could, if it's too big, you could use less stitches, like move some of those stitches to the instep and knit your heel across fewer stitches, or you could do the reverse and use more stitches. I'm trying to remember, but I think that's why it fits so much better, is you have the 3 wedges, but you actually I think you do use more stitches. I can't remember now. I mean, I've done the heel before. We did it for our cuff down sock, but I wanted to do it again because it's just another great alternative for a heel. So we're going to do all in one color, solid color. We'll have some decorative pattern, sweet tomato heel, some kind of a toe construction. I'm not quite sure yet, but that will be coming up probably not until January. I've got 2 other tutorials ready to go, just finishing up the pattern details. And then we'll have 1 more to go in February, where we'll be on shorty needles. And then that will be our toe up sock series. We'll have done 6 cuff down and then 6 toe up, and then who knows, I have a couple more ideas for sock tutorials after that, but we'll have to wait and see. Now I've got another upcoming project. This one is going to be using another Knit Picks yarn, their Wool of the Andes Superwash in worsted weight. This color is called Columbine, this lovely dark purple. So this is going to be my sweater for our upcoming workshop. If you've watched any of the last 2 podcasts, I've talked about that. We're going to have a workshop, or I don't know what to call it, because it's going to be more than 1 class. It's going to be 2 months of classes about modifying and customizing a top-down raglan sweater. So the goal of the class is to take any top-down raglan sweater and customize it. Customize the sleeve or the body length, change the waist shaping or add waist shaping, make it an A-line, change the neckline, add short rows to the back neck, like all of these different things. Add bust darts, that's a big one for bust shaping. So I know top-down raglans are probably one of the most popular sweater constructions. People really love their top-down seamless sweaters, and raglans are right up there as one of the top, but they can be hard to fit really well. So I think talking about customizing and making changes to make it fit well is important. And I've done videos in the past where I talked about how I changed the different things in sweaters, you know, made them longer, changed the A-line, the basic shape to an A-line shape, added bust darts, all of those different things. So I want to sort of like kick it up a notch and show people how to do that, but it's a lot of work to do that, and I really want to make it a good hands-on class and have people actually knit their sweater and go through it with me. So it's not something I can just do like here on YouTube. It's going to be like somewhere else, probably on Zoom, or I'll teach live, and then we'll have like Q&As, things like that, where you can ask questions. So that's what I'm working on. That will be coming up. Right now I'm just swatching. So the base sweater that I've already picked is Flax by Tin Can Knits, and I'm going to modify that, really modify that. It's a crew neck sweater. I'm going to turn it into a V-neck. I'm going to add bust darts. I'm thinking about changing the rib, or maybe adding something decorative along the raglan lines. The sleeves, I think I'm going to do like a 3/4 inch, like, or maybe an elbow length sleeve. So you can see I really want to make a lot of modifications so I can show people how it's done. So when the sweater is finished, it's not going to look like the flax sweater. But the whole goal is to show you, you can take any top-down raglan, basic knit in the round, seamless raglan sweater, and make all these changes to it if you want. And I want to walk people through how to do that. So it starts with swatching, of course. So I've already got my yarn, and I'm going to probably do a few swatches, and that will be part of the class as well. I will walk through how I swatch and the best way to get measurements from your swatch, how big your swatch should be. We've done a whole knit and chat all about swatching, so it's pretty much the same information. Now that I think about it, I should also have one on what type of yarn to use, like fiber, because that's where I also see a lot of issues, people using yarns that are not great. There are no seams in a top-down raglan sweater, so you really need to find a yarn that's going to hold its shape. So something soft and drapey might be lovely in a shawl, but in a raglan sweater where there's no seams or structure, all of the weight's sitting like on your neckline, and it stretches out and it doesn't look so great. So I'll have to make a note to add a video about that. So the whole goal right now is just for me to swatch, get my gauge information, probably do a second swatch because I might change like whatever increases are used a lot. I mean, there's lots of different choices for the increases on the raglan line, so I might swatch to pick the ones I want there, and still undecided about like if I want to put like maybe a decorative cable or a little lace pattern in between the increases. I'm still thinking about that, or just keep it a little more simple because I am changing the whole neckline too. I'm going to make it a V-neck instead of a crew neck, which is a pretty major change in a pattern like this. So I've got to get my swatching done. I've got to sort of like think about the introductory videos, because once we start the workshop, you know, I'm going to open it in December, and then I want to have a few videos there where I talk about swatching, fiber choices, measuring yourself so you can pick the right size. But then we're not actually going to cast on until January. So, but that gives everybody a lot of time in December because we also have holiday things going on, so I don't want to take a ton of time. So probably I'm going to open it in maybe by the podcast next month. I'll be ready to like sort of open the cart, I guess, to say for that. So you can join the course. You'll have all those preliminary videos you can watch, so you can start getting like choosing the right size, picking your yarn, swatching. So in January we can kick right off and cast on. Now if you're interested in joining the waiting list for this workshop, I have a simple sign up form on my website. You just have to pop your email address into the form. Those are going to be the first people that I notify when the course is ready to go in December. And I'm not sure. I'm probably going to have like a cap on the number of people that I'm going to have in this sort of first group, because it's the first time I've done this and I don't want to have so many people that it's overwhelming to answer all of the questions. So I'm not sure how many people that will be. We'll see. But you can join the waiting list anyway, and you'll hear about it first. Those will be the first people that are notified about the course anyway. So if you want to hear about it first, then join that waiting list. So we have to end, of course, with our monthly giveaway, and this month it is Universal Yarns Deluxe Bulky Superwash, 2 skeins of this lovely Christmas red bulky yarn in this Christmas red color. So if you're doing some holiday knitting, it's a great color for that, or probably a hat, maybe a cowl, or some bulky mittens. It's enough here to do like a couple accessories together as a little Christmas set if you wanted, or however you want to use it. But it's this lovely bulky superwash yarn. It's 100% superwash wool from Universal Yarns. And along with that, I've had a design published in an issue of Knit Now. If you've ever gotten one of those, that magazine specifically, or other ones where sometimes they have it packaged up with other little notions or little booklets. Well, I ordered a couple copies of the magazine because I needed one for me, but I needed one for my mom, and she didn't need all the inserts too, so I mailed her the magazine. But the insert from that extra copy was this 12 Book of Knitted British Birds. So I don't know, it feels kind of weird to give it away because this is just an insert from one of the issues of Knit Now, but I thought somebody might want to knit some little birds. I'm keeping one because I'm thinking about knitting some. I think they would be very cute sitting on the shelf behind me. But I couldn't just toss this. I thought it would be nice for somebody. So I'm passing it along in our little giveaway collection with the yarn. So if you want to knit some little birds, you're not going to be able to use that bulky yarn for these. Oh, I didn't even look at this part. There's even a section on real birds in there. So you get your 2 skeins of yarn, this book of British birds, and our little nerdy knitting pin. Just a tiny little 1-inch pin. That will also be in your little giveaway. I was going to say basket, but it's not a basket. It'll just be a mailing envelope. But your giveaway prize, that's the word. So 2 skeins of Universal Bulky, Deluxe Bulky Superwash yarn from Universal Yarns, our little booklet, and our pin. So to enter this giveaway, I just want to ask one question. Have you ever used any yarns from Universal Yarns? You can just tell me yes or no. I've used them. No, I haven't. And I'll put a link to their website down below, so if you want to go look through, they have some fabulous yarns. I've used this one. I've used their bamboo pop, which is a blend of cotton and bamboo, and I loved it. It's really, I've got a sweater, or well, a summer top, sort of like a spring summer top that I wear, and it's lovely drapey yarn. Like, it's just, the bamboo is like a silk, like it's got that sort of really drape and soft and kind of sheen to it like a silk does. And I just noticed, because I popped over to look at their yarns again, they also offer that in a sock weight yarn. So if you don't like wool, or you're allergic to wool and you want to knit socks, then it I would give that a try. I'm not sure how that would hold up as socks, but I guess because you can wash and dry them, that would really bring them back to their size, because I imagine they might stretch out a little more than wool would. But it's worth giving a try, I think, if you don't like wool for socks. So the bamboo pop also comes in sock yarn now. They've got lots of fabulous yarns. Their yarns are very affordable, but just lots of great colors, lots of good different yarn lines. Those are the only 2 I've used, is this bulky superwash and then the bamboo pop, but they've got a lot of other ones that I really like as well. So that's all you have to do to enter the giveaway, is tell me if you've ever used their yarns, or if you haven't. That's it. And next Wednesday, November 1st, I will use a random comment generator to pick a comment that tells me if they've used or not used Universal Yarns. And I will leave a comment under your comment telling you that you've won and that you need to respond to me by email. I'll leave my email address there and give you 48 hours to get back to me. And if I don't hear from you within that 2 days, then I will have to choose somebody else. And that's happened more than once. So make sure your notifications are turned on. And you're not going to get a spam thing. There's no spam messages that can leave you, like a bot telling you won something. If you hear from me, it's really me. I really watch my comments closely, and I delete anything spam. Nobody can actually put the word giveaway in, and the comment will not be approved. I have to see it first. So you're not going to get spam. If you hear from me, it's really me. So that's how you can enter. This giveaway is not sponsored by YouTube in any way. Here's your fine print. I'm just doing this on my own with things that I have here in my stash that I want to send out into the world to some other knitter who would love and appreciate them. So that's it. Just answer that question. That will enter you into the giveaway, and the giveaway is closed on November 1st, Wednesday, next week, and I'll choose a winner then. That wraps up this episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast, so thank you so much for joining me today, and I'd love to hear about your knitting projects, so you can leave me a comment, tell me about what's on your knitting needles this week, and if you're new here, I'll put a playlist right here, and you can click through and watch past episodes from this season to catch up with what we're talking about here. And if you've been around a while and you're a regular watcher of the podcast, then I'll put another video here that you might have missed, and you can click through, and I'll see you in the next video.